Hey everybody, it's Lindsay with Rescue Stories. Lindsay Baker here with Rescue Stories every Saturday at 10. And today my guest is Lil Feingold. Lily is an animal advocate and rescue volunteer. She works with several organizations such as Jerusalem Society for Welfare of Street Cats, Pegasus Israel Equine, Alma Rescue, one of our own contributors, Erin Riley Carrasco is the founder of that organization. And then, of course, you work with San Diego Humane Society, El Cajon Animal Control, Friends of Cats, and on and on and on and on. So you have gone to Israel to rescue cats as well. And we want to hear all about your stories, Lily, and how difficult it is to bring animals across the border, what people can do. But let's just start out with how you became vegan and got on started on your journey, if you would.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm happy to be here. I became a vegetarian in high school when I saw 60 Minutes on the slaughterhouse. And then in college, pretty much went cold turkey on meat. And then my best friend, Erin Riley Carrasco, PETA's sexiest vegan over 50, got very involved in veganism and activism, as did my sister. And it was just a natural progression. And about 6 years ago, I really started weaning off of things. And in the last couple years, I just said goodbye to dairy and eggs and haven't missed them. And it's just a natural progression because once I learned about the dairy industry, it was easy to stop.
Yes, that's great. And, you know, it's funny you said 6 years ago, and that's about when I started my journey. And not to just personalize it, but I think about 5 or 6 years ago is when suddenly people became aware, much more aware of what veganism is, the idea of, why it's so important, not only for our health, for the planet, for the incredible, unspeakable suffering the animals go through. Even people don't think so in the egg industry or milk. They think that the animals live, but their lives are horrendous, and eventually they are slaughtered, as we know. What do you think about the future? Do you think that this is something that is a trend that will continue on, or is it something that is just faddish? What do you think about that?
Definitely not a fad, based on all the selections that you see now, not just in health food stores, but in Target, Walmart, Albertsons, Vons. They have a huge vegan section, and they're not in it for animal advocacy. They're in it for their the dollars, the nickels and dimes, and they know that there's a lot of earning for plant-based foods. And I think the future is very bright. There's so many meatless alternatives. People are, especially now, quarantining. People are more aware of their health, and they're invested in their health, and they're cooking healthier. It's like a very big ship steering it ever so slowly. It's not a speedboat. You're not going to flip a U, but you can gently steer and redirect the ship. So I'm very hopeful. I'm excited by the health benefits.
Yeah, my mom, I just put on a vegan diet 2 months ago, and now her doctor cut back her blood pressure medicine by half. We thought it was 2/3, but then we did have to go back a little. But that's only 2 months. So it does have a tremendous effect on you. Let's just talk about, first, let me just show a little video here of some of your rescue work. I think. Okay, so that was really amazing. I'll have you talk about that. I noticed you do mostly cat rescue, but you do both, right?
Yes.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about what we were seeing there, the different scenarios?
Okay, well, I just want to preface it by saying that my first word in the English language was cat before mom or dad.
Oh,
So it's in my baby book, and everybody always jokes. I said cat in my crib before any other word, and it was just destiny. So I do primarily cats because I understand them a lot better than dogs. I know
yeah.
cats in and out, and dogs I know, but not like I do cats. Plus, it's easier to take across 9 cats from Mexico to the US or from Israel to the US than it is 9 dogs. It's a numbers thing.
Okay.
So did I answer your question?
Yeah, no, I was going to ask you another question. Like, I agree with you. The thing about cats that people are sort of their personalities jibe. I'm a cat person. We have dogs and cats, but I'm definitely a cat person. And what I was thinking is, okay, I'm going to go to Lily when I have some questions about my cats. But when you mentioned bringing them across the border, boy, that's a big subject. Maybe you want to address, and maybe the differences between bringing them from Mexico, bringing them from Israel. Can you address that a bit?
Certainly. So it used to be when I first started bringing cats and kittens from Jerusalem to the United States, it was a little bit less popular. And I just want to tell you just a quick anecdote. I was in the in the airport in Tel Aviv, and I was carrying a beautiful Jerusalem street cat, carrying him home to be my cat. And this wizened older farmer kibbutznik came up to me and he looked in the carrier and he said, "Is that a Siamese?" And I said, "No." "Persian?" "No." "Purebred?" "No." And and then he said, "Well, what is it?" And I said, "It's a street cat." And he thought for a minute, and then he put his hand up and he said, "That is a cat that was born with mazel, with luck."
Oh,
And it was, and so it used to be a little bit more difficult. And then I've noticed that when I've flown on El Al with litters of cats, they're actually extremely welcoming. The flight attendants ooh and ah over them. Times have changed. Israel is very aware of animal advocacy, and it became pretty easy. And then you just need a health certificate within 24 hours of flight. And then it got so routine that I actually got to know the customs officer at LAX. Really nice guy, and I would come up and he'd say, "Who you bringing back this time?" So yeah, and when people fly back and forth, I would ask them to please bring a litter back for me.
oh, wonderful. So what is the restriction of bringing, like I've gone to Mexico and seen dogs I wanted to rescue and consequently called some rescues, but I wanted to take them out, but I just was afraid. I didn't even know the process. Can you
Yes.
explain to people that? That would be great.
So the animals we bring in have to be seen by a veterinarian, and the animal receives basically a passport or a certificate. It's a little pass book that has the name, the date of birth, the description of the animal, and then it has its vaccine records. Dogs need to have a rabies vaccine, and they need to be a minimum of 4 months old in order to get that and in order to cross. Cats coming from Mexico into the US do not need vaccines. Sometimes a Border Patrol agent might ask, and then we just gently remind them that only dogs need the vaccines. Coming from a foreign country like Israel, if you're coming from a country that doesn't have a drug trafficking problem into the US, they're pretty lax about it. If I were dogs, let's say from South America or Central America, they would require a little bit more of an inspection.
Because some animals are used, they actually have them swallow drugs and then later kill them and take the drugs, right?
They
Things
actually
like
have veterinarians do that to them,
wow.
like a spay, and they don't swallow the animals. They don't swallow the drugs. They are inserted in their abdominal cavity, and then they're sewn back up.
And then they're later killed and taken the drug, right? The drug's taken out. Ugh.
It's horrific.
It is.
So if someone like you, Lindsay, were to be in Mexico and see an animal and you said, "This is my soulmate dog. I want him to come to Los Angeles or San Diego," that dog would need to go see a veterinarian, would not have to be spayed and neutered across. That could be done in the States, but would need a vaccine certificate, and then just walk them over or drive them over. The Customs and Border Patrol agents are really savvy. They know what they're looking for, and they're not looking for animal rescuers. We don't fit the profile of what they're looking for at the border.
Interesting. So if like last year we were in Greece and I found an animal there, do you have to go to someone before you just take them to the vet and then get on the plane basically, or call the airline and make arrangements? Is that,
yes,
you don't have to contact any government, the Border Patrol or anything beforehand?
So let's say you see an animal in Greece and you want to take that animal home.
Yeah.
You would have to, so the U.S. Customs, and I'm not an official, just from my experience, they would require that you see a licensed veterinarian within 24 hours of the flight. You would have to notify your flight. Some flights don't let animals on if there's a cadaver or if there's a dead body in the plane. If that's the rule, you would have to notify, and you pay basically what you'd pay for an extra suitcase. And you show your certificate at customs when you are going through passport and baggage check, and you would just basically make a reservation on the airplane. And you just need within 24 hours a certificate of vaccination.
So what happens if the dog, well, you're doing cats and you may not be able to answer this one, but what if the animal doesn't fit under the seat? I've heard some horror stories about the airlines. Can you address that a little bit? If the animals have to go in a different area?
So they don't like to put cats so much in the plane inside because of allergies. Reputable airlines will not fly animals when it's too hot or too cold in case they're stuck on the tarmac. But down below where the baggage areas are, there are designated areas for animals, and it is air conditioned or heated down there. However, flying out of Israel in August is going to be challenging because it's so hot in the Middle East. There are sometimes months that you can fly animals if you can't actually put your animal in a carrier below your seat. So it really depends on the size of the animal, and it depends on who's on the flight. Again, if they're transferring a deceased person, you cannot fly an animal in the cargo. Isn't that interesting?
It is interesting. I wonder what the connection is. It doesn't seem to, I don't know.
The rule, and I didn't write it, but
yeah.
You have to think about.
So you, as we mentioned, work with several different rescue organizations, and I have some of them here. We'll start with probably the one nearest and dearest to your heart, Alma. Let's just show a picture of this rescue, and maybe you can just talk about a little bit about what Alma does. We did hear from Erin about it, but it's always good to hear again.
So Alma Rescue is a grassroots local 501c3, rescues dogs and cats. Erin and I have been best friends for 30 plus years. And she is absolutely wonderful with dogs, and I'm absolutely wonderful with cats. And she and I it's her organization. I just ride the coattails. But she and I, for a number of years, have been going down to Mexico, and we will wheel over or walk over dogs and cats. We do this regularly. This is our time together, and we have rescue partners in Tijuana with whom we get the animals. And these are people we trust. These are people with whom we've established relationships for a number of years. And I just want to say that when Erin and I were youngins, we used to participate in PETA protests and Fur-Free Friday, the day after Thanksgiving.
Nice. Yeah. There's so many great opportunities for people that want to get involved, and we do want to talk about that. Maybe you can address that a little bit before we move on to the other organizations. You have so many here. which is great. But like somebody like is watching today and they, have limited resources. They'd love to donate. They'd love to help, but they do have time. And or maybe just time, maybe they can't even go out of their house, but they have a computer. So let's just talk about some of the ways people can help out.
So if people want to donate, I would highly encourage people donating funds to smaller rescues where the CEO doesn't take a 6-figure salary. I would donate food, blankets, carriers. Those are things that we always need. I always need those. I have friends who just randomly will send me $100 and say, go buy cat food. So start with your local smaller organizations. If you have a bathroom or a laundry room, sign up with one of your small local animal rescue groups to become a foster. You're not on the line for any long-term commitment. It's usually a month to 6 weeks. And I wanted to go back to that lovely video you made. I don't know if people remember, but there's a few litters there of orange and white kittens, creamsicle mom and white kittens. For example, those kittens were put on Facebook as free to good home for mousers, and the kittens were 4 weeks old.
Oh my
and the
God.
woman had them on her roof in Tecate in the sun. They were on the roof, and I messaged her and said, bring them to me immediately, and was able to find a wonderful foster, and they're now living and thriving. All those animals were just thrown to the streets. So if anyone is interested, Lindsay, foster.
That's what I was just going to jump in with. You were saying mousers. Explain to people that don't know what that means, because a lot of people don't know what that term means.
Okay, so those are people who want a free pest control service. So they just go to Craigslist or online to Free to Good Home, and they either put them outside and the coyotes get them and maybe one survives, and they are mousers, i.e. they chase mice, and or they feed them to their snakes. People collect kittens to feed to their snakes. I can't tell you how many times I've called and messaged people and said, please do not give your animals away for free to good homes. They're not going to end up in good homes.
Right.
So it's an awareness. But really, to answer your initial question, fostering saves lives, and the rescue groups will give you the food, the litter, whatever you need. They just need a place.
Right. I was doing that for quite a while in San Diego. That was my first area of activism. It was very rewarding. The only little challenge at first is not to keep any. I did keep a couple, but I did learn after a while, and you can. And as much, I like to say, it makes me sound terrible, but as attached as you might get to this one little kitten, when you find it a great home within a week, there were so many wonderful kittens. It wasn't like my heart was broken like it was my own. And I think people fear that, and that prevents them from doing it. I would still be doing it. It just so happened I moved up to LA and I gotten into all this. But every time you mention, I'm like, ooh, litter of kittens, that I could help out. My mind's going, yes, It's so much fun and so rewarding.
It is so rewarding. And this year with COVID-19, a lot of the large multi-million-dollar funded agencies have dropped the ball, and all the smaller groups with whom I'm associated have had to pick up the slack. And that includes fostering. That includes trapping, because those fancy ones with the infomercials on TV are not stepping up during COVID.
So we're not going to mention any names, but when people see these commercials with the heartbreaking animals chained up and it tears at your heartstrings, I personally would say, this is not Jane Unchained, this is Lindsay saying, go to the small rescues. Why do you think they're making these big commercials? Folks that are doing the boots on the ground work, they don't have money to do glossy commercials. They're out rescuing hands-on. And people get caught up in this, and we do need to get that message out as well. Yes, please help, but find, like you say, your local, there's lots of local options that are great.
I've even had some of the mothers of my students come with me down to Tijuana. And by the way, Lindsay, one of my goals is to have every family in the school and in my synagogue have a rescued dog or cat. That is my goal.
That's fantastic.
I'm up to 12 families and about 16 animals. So,
Great.
you know, it's just a matter of education. You know, you're talking about doing the heavy lifting. Come down to Tijuana with us, meet the rescuers, transport the cats and the dogs. And I can tell you that once we cross into the United States and we're walking toward the parking lot, those dogs visibly exhale and they know they're safe.
They know, don't they, in their hearts? They can tell the
time.
energy coming off of you, that it's a love, an energy of love. They can feel. Because I know my mom's dog's here, and she's constantly, you know, like on Frasier, the dad's dog that stared, that's what she does to me, because she's not certain of me yet. You know what I mean? She's reading me constantly. And animals are so aware. People don't realize this.
We walk them over. I carry cats all over on carriers across my body, and then Erin has like an old lady cart, you know, like a shopping cart, and we wheel them across. And since you asked about the border, I just want to really briefly say that at the San Ysidro port of entry, the Customs and Border Patrol agents have been nothing but supportive of our animal rescue efforts. I know them by name. They're dog and cat lovers, and they have been, by and large, extremely supportive of the rescue work.
That's fantastic. And it's so great that you were able to build that relationship, because I mean, if they want to stop you from doing it, they could shut you down in a minute, any of these patrols. And that was always, to me, the concern, you know, when because I mean, you go into Mexico as a tourist and what you see is just heartbreaking. I couldn't enjoy my trips over Europe because of that. It was just like seeing all these animals. And I think some of the cities in Greece didn't even have shelters at all. It was all done boots on the ground by people, and that was only a small community, and you saw the animals suffering.
It's an awareness of spay and neuter. And again, it's my metaphor of steering a very big ship. Yeah. It doesn't come overnight, but that awareness is there. And I just really quickly wanted to say that last December, my friend and I were walking a mama dog and 4 or 5 of her puppies across. It'd been a pretty long line. And as we were walking into San Ysidro and crossing into the US border, the dog, Holly, slipped out of her harness and bolted and turned around and started running back into Tijuana. And we were frozen. And I have to tell you, 3 Border Patrol agents closed the gate, shut down the border till we got Holly, harnessed her again, and walked her across. And those U.S. border
tears to my eyes.
I was crying, and they said thank you, and they said, "Hey, we're dog lovers too." So the reason I'm telling you these stories is just to take away a little bit of that concern at the border. You know, 501c3 rescuers are not for whom they're looking when you're crossing into the United States.
Yeah. So it does help to have some sort of affiliation. So for people that want to get involved, it's good to start off working with an organization. For one thing, they have the experience, they know what you're going to go up against, and it's just a win-win. Well, for me, I'm always a team player, so I always want to work with other people, you know, when I'm doing stuff.
So many of us we cross post and we network with other volunteers, but it's completely rewarding. It's worthwhile. You can do it on your own. I'm an independent rescuer, and I just network with other 501c3s. And together we get hundreds of animals from point A to point B.
And that's fantastic. And that's the work that, I mean, that's what we need more of. And people need to know it's happening. And I think, you know, I've gone to city council meetings, and I've heard them say themselves, the animal shelters, that it's the community needs to be involved in rescuing, that they cannot do it. Their facilities can't hold the animals, but if they could work with people like you, individual rescuers, give you the resources, help you, build that network of fosters and so forth. That could be the answer to our shelter problems. And I hope that that does come to be. And if there's things we can do to help get that word out, we will definitely.
It takes a village, and anyone who's listening can go to their local city or Department of Animal Services public shelter and sign up to be a foster. They'll give you the food, and mother cat with nursing kittens will not be euthanized if you can take them home and put them up in your house. It's as easy as that. It's highly rewarding. Yes, it's hard and challenging when you have to say goodbye to those little babies, but you know what I mean? It's karma. You put them back into, to adoption.
Get another litter. Get a new litter.
Exactly.
Keep the ball rolling. Yeah.
It's rewarding. And I just wanted to mention that as a teacher, as an educator, I really try to role model what it is to be compassionate to my students.
Yeah.
And without getting in trouble, because people are very touchy these days, I just try to advocate rescue, compassionate eating, not going to the circus. And I don't know if you know this, but in schools, we're sent free tickets to the circus and free tickets and coloring books to Slave World, to SeaWorld. So you just try to.
Of course, we can't really. We don't want to mention. We invite SeaWorld on to talk about. They treat animals kindly, but we do have to give them the opportunity to come on, and let's not mention. That's okay.
But I'm just saying that we, as an educator, we definitely try to. I try to instill compassion in my students.
That's great. Well, we're going to talk about your recipes and your students a couple minutes, but I just want to go. We've got another whole half hour left, which is great. And I want to go through some of the different organizations like Amanda Foundation. Let's talk about them for a second. What they do and so forth. Go ahead.
Are you familiar with the Amanda Foundation in Beverly Hills?
I've heard of the organization, but other than that, and seeing a couple of different things they were doing, I have not. No.
So when I lived in Los Angeles, I volunteered with dogs for years. And Amanda, the word Amanda's root is deserving to be loved. So desirable or deserving to be loved, and that's why they picked the name. Terry Austin, an actress, founded it 20 years plus years ago. And what the Amanda Foundation does is they go to high kill shelters in certain parts of Los Angeles. They pluck dogs and cats before they're euthanized, and then they bring them to Beverly Hills. And so for people who would not feel comfortable going into certain shelters in the city, they do feel comfortable going to Beverly Hills, right there, right in the heart of the flatlands, and by, swimming pools and movie stars. And we would walk them, and they networked the dogs. And for years, I and my friends volunteered at the Amanda Foundation. Again, if you're in Los Angeles, it's a great place to go walk dogs and walk around Beverly Hills.
Yeah. And one thing I wanted to say was a lot of people don't like to go into the shelters. And of course, we need to be strong for the animals and do that. But if you go to a rescue event, like a little rescue event in Beverly Hills or Calabasas, they have them too. It's more of a positive kind of situation. They can hold the animals. It doesn't feel sad. And, the animals are being helped and are going to be adopted. So that makes people more comfortable to go. So we do encourage them to go to those things. Yeah.
I heard that all the time. People would say, I can't handle going into the shelters. It's too upsetting. So you take Amanda volunteers, they'll go in, they'll pluck animals, and not necessarily the little white fluffy Bichon Frises. They'll pluck the ones that need out first.
Yeah,
and
that's good.
A little shampoo, a little spa treatment, and
they're Beverly Hills pooch.
Yeah, exactly.
A little fancy coat and diamond collar, and they're all set.
Trust me, we've done it. We've done it at the border too, where animals might look a little rough, and we put on a tutu or a little, a little sparkly collar and walk them right across, and they have a whole new attitude.
That's amazing. And people look at them differently. It's sad to say that we're that superficial, but we are.
It's
But
marketing, Lindsay.
yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's
Wrong.
marketing. And thankfully, for once, you're doing it with the right intent, because we see a lot of people marketing animals with a bad intent,
Correct.
exploitation, because
Correct.
they're very likable and adorable, and they do draw people in. But we want to do it, of course, in the right way. So let's move on to the next one. And this is East County Animal Rescue. This is the new organization you were speaking of, or is that different?
East County ECAR has been around for quite a while,
Okay.
and they are a 501c3 in East County of San Diego. Amazing work.
Yeah. And so they're primarily dog and cat rescue, because I know that area is farm animals too, right? There's a lot of animals in that, like people who are zoned for animals. I know there were in my neighborhood, I lived in Singing Hills, which is above El Cajon. And that we had goats, we had, not us, but the neighborhood, peacocks, goats, chickens. I don't know what they were doing with them. We had all sorts of animals there. So does that shelter get a lot of, farm animals type thing also?
No, ECAR does primarily cats and dogs, but mostly cats. They have an expert team of trappers, and they go out and they trap colonies of cats, spay and neuter them. They then usually do not return to field the animals. They rehabilitate them and they place them. They are also adopting cats out of PetSmart in El Cajon. I think they have two locations, Santee and El Cajon in East County. That's why they're East County Animal Rescue. They do the dirty work in the sense that they trap the animals, bring them in, spay and neuter. They do the heavy lifting in the animal rescue world.
So when you go into like a Petco or a PetSmart, those kittens and animals, they don't stay in those little tiny cages, do they? They're just there during the day and someone takes them at night.
So it depends.
It's so sad to see that.
So they a lot of times are fostered during the week in people's homes, and then on the weekends when there's the most foot traffic, then they're brought into those PetSmart display cases. Yeah. But they don't just stay in those kennels. They have volunteers who come in and let them out, and they walk around in the area behind you. They might sleep in them overnight in the weekends, but they're usually fostered during the week in people's homes.
Oh, that's good to know, because that is such a sad thing when you go and you see this bored cat sitting in there, and I just want to take every single one out. But that's good to know.
Those are the lucky ones, because those are the ones that have been taken off the street or taken out of high kill shelters. And temporarily they might be in those kennels, but not for long. That's good. Yeah, the traffic there is really good too. A lot of people see them. I have 3 cats myself, and so I've been in there a lot of times looking at them and wanting to take more, but that my husband wouldn't deal with anymore. We have 2 dogs, well, at that time 3. We were up to 7 rescues, so now we're down to 5. But just 5. Yeah, 5 that are safe. Let's talk about the next one, Friends of Cats. This one here. Mm-hmm. So is this an organization that you work with as well? Is that also in East County? Yes. So Friends of Cats has been around since the 1920s, if I'm not mistaken. They're one of the first animal advocate groups in San Diego. Friends of Cats is a no-kill shelter. They have a dedicated crew. They have a building, out in East County, and they have approximately 270 to 300 cats. Excuse me one second. Sure. And because they're a no-kill shelter, they take in less cats, but they also have an FIV and an FELV area for cats that have these diseases where they don't have to be euthanized. They live out their full lives. and they have a retirement home that's set up for people in their will. If they pass away and they want to make sure their cats are taken care of, they can bequest, or they can leave a bequest in their will, and then the cats go to Friends of Cats and live out their lives in a house. And it's set up with a TV and couches and chairs, and it feels like a home. And they're lifetime cats, and they're looked after for their natural lives.
Wow.
So,
that's an amazing thing. You know, I was looking for someone I think every single person should consider that. And I was wondering about who to contact, you know, to take them. So this is good to know. Now, if you're not in this area, I'm sure, do you have any idea how people would go about looking for other organizations, like if they don't live in that area, to find for that sort of service? Because people should put in their will, you know, for their animals, they should make that consideration.
So I don't know any organizations outside of Friends of Cats that has a lifetime retirement home for them. But I would start by calling some of the smaller rescue groups and just asking what their lifetime setup is. That would just be my recommendation.
Yeah, and get to know a shelter before, you know, or a rescue before you commit to it. But it's certainly something to take into consideration, because so many animals wind up in the shelters that way. People die not wanting to give up their animals. I mean, my mom, if she couldn't move in with us, her animal would have been going in. Now we have adopted them. But yeah, it happens every day. So
it happens every single day. And that's why it's so important to make contingency plans for your animals. And I also wanted to point out regarding Friends of Cats is that they have a high school program where teens can come in and just cuddle the kittens and sweep up and play with the kittens, and then they get their volunteer hours. So how amazing would it have been when you were 16 and needed your volunteer hours to hold kittens and get your credits?
Yeah, so, it's like fun.
It is. So for parents of teens who want those hours, and they have teens who love cats and dogs, I would highly recommend checking the shelters.
And we have a message here, looking at some of the comments. Erin wrote, Lily has rescued so many animals in several countries and was my first friend who educated me on factory farming and got me up to go vegetarian over 32 years ago. Wow. So that's a nice, so you saw the film and you became vegetarian overnight, so to speak, right? And then
so I saw a 60 Minutes episode on veal, and that was it, cold turkey. And then, you know, it took me a while then to wean off of other. I mean, I never ate pork for religious purposes, but I mean, I tried not to. I'm sure I made mistakes in college. However, as an adult, I didn't eat that. And then a number of years ago, I saw on a PETA website what happens to chickens, and I was done. That's it, cold turkey. And I also, just a quick anecdote about
take your time
about chickens is that I teach in a Jewish school, and years ago, one of the educators wanted to show a film called The Life of a Kosher Chicken. And so for the younger grades, I'm talking like second, third, and fourth, he just put the film on and walked out of the room. And it shows the chick being born, the chick hatching, and then it's maturation, and then being sent to the slaughterhouse, and then getting killed, and then getting put on a hook, and then with thousands of other chickens, like the Door Factory and Monsters Inc., they're all on this conveyor belt and getting sent to be plucked. And I saw an entire room of children completely traumatized. It's called The Life of a Kosher Chicken, and it's not a very good life. And I realized at that point, as an educator, we could do a lot better than scaring the crap out of kids and showing them this little chick going through its short, miserable life and then being killed to be somebody's dinner. And that was one of those watershed moments, Lindsay, where I knew that we could do better in compassionate education.
Right. And so how do you negotiate the tide of where you can't step over a line in what you do and say in terms of that? So how do you negotiate that?
Very carefully. Like that joke, how do porcupines make love? Very carefully. And that is very carefully. I have to be mindful of my words, and I have to come across not as disapproving, but rather supportive. So when kids will say they've gotten a new animal, I have to be careful not to say, is it a rescue? Because they consider that a judgment. So I just let them tell me the story. I show pictures of my animals. And in class, when we start every class, we collect coins for charity. It's called tzedakah in Hebrew. And we start every class off with a coin in the tzedakah or charity box. And every single year in my classroom, we send money to Pegasus Israel, which is an equine rescue organization in Israel. And it's a way of building awareness without placing judgment on them. Oh, there it is right there.
Yeah, I've got a couple of shots from it. Let's just show folks what it looks like. So mostly donkeys and horses and so forth. Well, that's
yes.
the queen.
And I've gone there. So donkeys are really mistreated in the Middle East. They are beaten and burned and
everywhere.
Yes, they are. They are really. They're.
I've seen it all over.
Yes, and so there's a man in Israel. His name is Tzvika Tammuz. His father, and he told me this. His father is an Auschwitz survivor and has numbers on his forearm. His father taught him, don't do to the animals what the Nazis did to us.
Thank you.
And Tzvika grew up with such an awareness of the Holocaust and of animal rights and animals' feelings that he started Pegasus. And it's a play on words because in Hebrew, the word for horse is sus. So Pegasus, it's like Pegasus, the mythical animal, and then the horse. And so Pegasus is a play on words. And it's a way for me to teach a bit of Hebrew to my students because they now know the word sus. You can ride a sus or not ride a sus. And we collect money, and he takes these donkeys and horses and dogs, cats, and chickens out of harm's way in the Middle East. War is bad for people. War is really bad for animals. Mm-hmm. And when rockets come flying and land in fields, they sometimes blow up near donkeys and horses. So he does incredible work, and I have been there. I've been to his sanctuary, and you haven't lived until you've seen 75 rescued donkeys running through a pasture.
Oh.
And I highly recommend people Google Pegasus Israel and see Tzvika. Yeah. And because of the home in which he grew up and the sensitivity toward life and the suffering of all living creatures, he created this sanctuary.
Yeah.
So
that's wonderful. Oh my gosh. Mm-hmm.
So when you ask about teaching compassion in the classroom, rather than scolding, I just try to model the right behavior with not wearing leather, not wearing fur, bringing vegan lunches, cooking vegan projects in the class. And there's ways to do it in a positive way because, you don't want to be a scolding vegan. That doesn't get the message across.
It doesn't. It turns people off, and then it's the exact opposite of what we're trying to do, which is to show people and they can make their own choice because it's such an obvious choice, the compassion. And, I was able to I just got a new luxury car and I was able to get vegan seats. So you can. I said, look, the deal breaker is the seats. If they're not vegan, I'm not buying the car, you know?
Good for you.
So, and yeah, and the thing is, a lot of the car dealerships, you know, the more luxury are starting to pick up on that people do not want leather. And that, and a lot of people, we should mention this, think that, oh, well, they get killed for food, so I'll just wear leather. That's not the case. I mean, they specifically kill them for the skins as well. And those are a lot of the horses, we're talking about horses now and donkeys that come through slaughter because of horse racing. They don't make the grade, or they've used up their, you know, time where they're valuable and so forth. So people need to know that it isn't just, you know, oh, they're killing them anyway when it comes to the leather.
You know, you want to believe what you want to believe to justify what you're doing.
Yeah.
And when you get educated, you can either make the change or you can repress it and live in denial. And I'm pretty sure that there were times in my life when I somehow justified eating chicken, and I could live in denial, and then I couldn't.
Yeah.
So was able to make that change. And I have to tell you, it is extremely encouraging to see how many students say, Miss Feingold, guess what? I'm becoming plant-based for the animals. I've got one student who was a diehard vegan since she was in 2nd or 3rd grade, and she's going to go on and change the world. Her mother is a pediatrician. Her mother's on board with it. Her mother supports her. And, you know, what this child is doing is setting the example for her peers it's just more effective than anything I could ever say or do.
Yeah.
Make that choice.
Absolutely. When it comes from the peers, it's so much stronger. And I think that generation, I keep saying to people, I think the people from 16 and under, those are the people that are going to save the world, because they are so aware of all the issues and they do want to make a change and they're open to it. So it's wonderful. We have a couple more, and then we'll talk a little bit about your vegan recipes. Of course, PETA. So you worked with PETA as well. Do you want to talk about that? We all know about PETA, but you want to address that at all?
So way back when we were starting to learn about animal rights and advocacy, I used to write a lot of letters and to elected officials and to Gillette and, oh, I'm sorry, I'm not supposed to say company, sorry, to various corporations that tested on animals, and we used to write to them. I used to participate in a flea market or a swap meet type situation where we set up a table with all of the literature, and people would come by and we would discuss with them. And then, of course, as I said, Aaron and I, for years, attended various PETA rallies and demonstrations, etc. So it's just been an awareness with PETA as far as being a volunteer.
Yeah. Great.
It was real. It was a lot of it was working with the public, because it was easy for naysayers to say that we're a bunch of fruits, nuts, and flakes and a bunch of crazy people. And once you're talking to someone and you're presentable and you are articulate and you're speaking to people about animal welfare, it's how you change minds, slowly but surely.
Yep, I agree 100%. I have a picture of you here with Erin, since we talked about her so much. There you guys are going across the border, I think, right?
Yeah, that's a little Diva. That was a little dog, a little street dog, and I've got cats in that. See, I've got 2 carriers, and I'm loaded up with a bunch of kittens, and that was a little dog, and she got rolled across the border, and that was right there when we crossed into the U.S.
That's great. That's great. And so they know you're rescuing them when you come across, as you said. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And I mean, I've had the Border Patrol agents say, you know, when we've stopped or asked questions, it's not that we don't like animals. We just want to make sure that it's done by the rules. They've said to me, we all love dogs. We all love cats. They're very nice about it.
That's so cool to hear that. Yeah, it makes it a lot easier to do your work. We have a couple more comments. Let's check them out.
I like comments.
Yeah, Lily, you're a rock star. That's a good one. And Erin said, Diva.
Yeah, that dog is little Diva, and she went on to live her best life. She actually looked like a woodland creature, I think is what Aaron called her, but she looked like a little magical coyote, and
Oh,
she had no chance of surviving on the streets. And because we went down there and spent the day and got her and walked her across, she then has a future. So,
that's
you know, I've heard people say that we can't rescue our way out of the pet overpopulation problem.
yeah.
But you know that parable about saving every starfish, and the man's chucking the starfish back into the ocean after a big storm, and there's thousands of starfish on the sand, and a naysayer comes up and said, "Dude, what are you doing? You can't, save every starfish," as the guy's chucking him back into the ocean. And he says, "What does it matter?" And he holds up the starfish and he says, "It matters to this one."
Yeah.
And that really is my motivation. I can't save every starfish out of Tijuana or Jerusalem, but you know what? It matters to that little dog Diva and all those kittens and cats.
And just putting that out there and letting people see that you can do that is going to encourage more people to do so, and maybe to make the right choices when they're making choices here on this side of the border. Because, it goes on everywhere, not just in Mexico. It's in the US. There's cities, where we see they're rescuing chained up dogs and barnyard cats and all sorts of horror stories.
Lindsay, you're absolutely, suffering knows no borders. Rescue knows no borders. Animals don't recognize borders or boundaries.
Yeah.
Right?
That's absolutely true. One more thing we haven't talked about were your recipes, and we're getting towards the end here. So I'll show a couple of these. Maybe, who knows, we can have you on Lunch Break Live one day if you're good at, well, obviously you are, and you work with Aaron, so we should have you on. I'm surprised. Maybe you have been on with Aaron. I don't know. I'm assuming.
I have not been on with Aaron.
Oh, well, I can welcome you on some time as well, because we're always
Thank
looking
you.
for people to come on Lunch Break Live. They have great recipes. This looks good. What is this we're looking at right here?
This is what I call, since COVID, I'm calling it the pandemic pantry, and I just make something out of what's in my house. So I just did garden tomatoes and parsley and artichoke hearts and garbanzo beans, and
I'm writing that down.
And I just mixed it together with a tad of just mayo and a lot of herbs, and that's what I got. And red onion, and it was really good. And
I know you're really busy, but I wonder, would you be able to afterwards type just that into the comments for people?
I'd be happy to. That. And by the way, I'm making an effort to live well during the lockdown. So those are my great grandmother's dishes from 1924.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah.
That's
Life
great.
is short, right?
Oh, yeah. I mean, we're going out. I am. My mom's not going to come for obvious reasons. And I'm going to go do a bunch of home goods right after this, because we got to get cozier in here. We're here for the long run. Here's another one of your recipes. This looks really good. What is this one?
So I made a vegan chocolate chip torte.
Ooh.
And this was for 4th of July. And then I just had strawberries, blueberries on top of Soy Delicious ice cream. And voila. Didn't that turn out nicely? Yeah, just put it together.
So that might be something you can come on and show, that recipe for the torte. That'd be great. I'll talk to Paige, because we're always looking for great cooks and so forth, chefs.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're just wrapping up. So we have 5 minutes. If you have anything you want to talk about for the last 5 minutes, I always give that over to my guests. So.
Oh, thank you. I wanted to talk about two things that were really important to me and helped open my eyes. The first one was when I was a little girl, growing up in San Diego. I had a friend in Girl Scouts whose cat had kittens it seemed like every 4 or 5 months. This cat was always having kittens. And even though I didn't have the words to articulate what was upsetting me as a 2nd or 3rd grader, I knew it was I knew it was wrong because all of our pets were spayed and neutered. We're talking the 70s. So I remember taking my mom and dad's Time magazine and cutting out letters, and like an old-fashioned ransom letter, I wrote on the paper, "Spay your cat." And with the different letters that I glued on, folded it up, and I mailed it to their house. So even at 7 or 8 years old,
activism.
I was an activist because I sent an anonymous spay and neuter. And then also living in Israel, and again, talking about coming from a population that had seen such mass murder and tragedy, I saw the sensitivity toward animals. And I wanted to say that what really opened my eyes is that the Israeli Defense Forces has Meatless Mondays. And every Monday, the entire military of Israel has a vegan meal.
Wow.
Can you imagine if the U.S. military went vegan just one day a week?
I think if they went vegan one day a week, they would become vegan permanently.
So I just thought the awareness, I thought the awareness of my time in Israel and the fact that up to 30% of their population is vegan or vegetarian,
yes,
made a big impact on me. And those are two, I'm going to use this term, watershed moments in my life as being an activist, besides seeing that 60 Minutes. You know what, Lindsay, you never know when you're educating people, the seeds that take hold.
That is so true.
And I see a note here from somebody, spay and neuter.
Yes.
Absolutely. Spay and neuter, you've got to start at the source. But I also think awareness is so important. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Okay. Well, that was a terrific story, Lily, and I really enjoyed having you on. I would love to have you come on again in the future. Bring us some more stories, some more education. I love having another teacher on. Maybe we could craft a show around education and come back on and do that. That would be wonderful. I'd love to have you.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Lindsay. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. So, folks, we have come to the end of our time, and I believe we have another amazing show coming up for you right after this. Be sure to tune in next week at 10 o'clock for Rescue Stories and the Action Hour. And I'm your host, Lindsay Baker. Lily, goodbye and thank you. Don't go off. Just stay where you are, because most people do. I'm just going to end the broadcast. Bye, everyone. What happens is